thought it was a terrific discussion, and I think that it demonstrated something that a lot of us thought going into it, that this is a subject that is absolutely key to not only what we do as communications professionals, but one of the more profound cultural changes that the world is going through right now.
We needed this discussion because this discussion, it's all over the world. And I would skip the intermediate versus, because it's not versus, it's or.
And one of the reasons that I agreed so quickly to come and participate in this discussion is that it is, as I say, the central issue of our time, I think. The revolution in really human relations and the way we relate to institutions and politics that's been caused by these developments in social media in particular and the internet in general. It's just enormously profound, and it's precisely exactly the kinds of questions that we need to be grappling with.
The main issue is that 5 or 6, 7 years ago, a very small group of people used to be public figures. Now everyone is public.
Issues that are important to people in public life, whether they're movie stars or politicians or athletes or scientists, whomever, they're issues that we all grapple with, because what the internet in general and social media in particular have done is kind of leveled the playing field, and everyone today in one way or another is a public person.
Having in mind that all we are public, then we should know how to manage our publicity.
I think one of the things that came out of the discussion we just had was that because that's the case, we need to be much more mindful, we need to be much more responsible in terms of how we manage these tools and this power that we have now.
In a way that, number one, it increases our ethical standards and morality. Number two, increases our knowledge and the knowledge of the people who will read about us, because at the end of the day it's all about sharing of knowledge.
It was the lady who concluded actually our session, and while we on the panel, myself as a moderator and the panelists didn't really find the solution to this problem of how to deal with publicity and privacy, she made this conclusion and said it was the key is education.
I think we're learning as we go along, but I think as parents, I think we have to educate our children.
I would not fully agree, because these things you cannot educate. You can educate your children in your house, in your family, with the behavior. There are no textbooks written how to be more public or how to be less public.
We have to learn, but we also have to educate our children how to deal with the new media, and that's the way to make it safe. And it's so true, because if you think about innovations like driving a car or being on the road, that didn't exist 100 years ago. The chances of getting run over by a horse were very small. But what do we do today? We educate our children to be safe on the roads and to be aware of cars and the danger of traffic. And that's exactly what we need to do with the internet.
I think as citizens, we have to make sure that in the schools somehow they talk about not just the wonderful things you can do with a computer and with an internet connection, but with the implications of that. The danger you can do, the harm you can do to yourself, and how you protect yourself. I think that's all things that we need to be talking about in every institution, whether it's at home in the family or in the schools or through the media. It's interesting because kids now, I have a 9-year-old daughter, for example. She's grown up in a world in which all of this, has always been here, and so it may well be that when she comes of age in 10 years, when she's a young adult, a lot of the things we worry about won't be of such a big concern, either because we've learned to control them or because social values have changed, and things we find embarrassing now, perhaps they won't find embarrassing in 10 years. So we're in this interesting transitional generation. I think in some ways our kids will have it a lot easier than we do.
The less you reveal about yourself in our business, the less interesting you are. It's the personal element that makes stories interesting. But at the same time, we have to be careful of how much personal elements we reveal of ourselves and of others.
One of the things that you see among a lot of celebrities is taking control of their public images in a way that they couldn't before. You know, obviously they have their own Twitter streams, they have their own Facebook pages. Not all of them are good at it. I mean, for some of them, I once said to someone, I was quoted in the newspaper saying that, you know, when you give some celebrities a Twitter account, it's like handing a loaded pistol to a child, and they do hurt themselves. But you know, again, this is a change that doesn't affect only celebrities, it affects us all, but it obviously has much greater impact with celebrities, is that you no longer, if you want to get a message out to your fans or to people who know you, you don't have to depend anymore on convincing some reporter or some news producer to you know, quote you accurately. You can speak directly to them through your Facebook page or your Twitter stream or whatever social media you use. So that's an enormous change. And we never used to have to worry about what the world thought of us beyond a small circle of friends and family. Now we have the potential to embarrass ourselves in front of potentially millions of people. And so, and some people do that. I mean, you know, they put things on their Facebook page that, you know, a few years later they look back and they go, oh my God, what did I do? But yeah, so that's a lesson we all need to learn.
On the one hand, we have our court, the Human Rights Court, which is constantly having to make judgments on infringement of, as we call it, private and family life. That is a human right. On the other hand, I, like yourselves and everybody here in the communications business, we live on free expression. And the last thing we want is for states, governments, or international organizations to restrict our freedom. And so I live with this conflict every day. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges. And I'm grateful for the organizers of this conference to address it.
I think that a lot of what both Daniel and Maxim had to say about the importance of transparency you know, resonated, you know, very deeply. I mean, and I think one of, you know, these debates are fun because they enable us to explore these issues. They're slightly artificial because no one, well, I won't say no one, but I don't think even Maxim believes in absolute transparency. As he said, you know, in the business world, you can't have that to a certain extent. And by the same token, certainly I wouldn't maintain that no transparency is what we need. That would be a horrible thing. I mean, obviously there's a balance that needs to be struck, and the interesting thing about these kinds of discussions is that's how we work out this very complicated question of where the balance needs to be.
Transparency is an issue of brave people. So you must be brave in a way that you understand what you publish, to what extent you publish, and also if you publish it in one place, then it will go everywhere.
It's easy to, you know, to say that a situation such as with Hugh Grant, where journalists hacked into his voicemail to find out about some personal relationship he was having, and we can say, well, that's clearly wrong because hacking into voicemail is illegal. And it's perfectly easy to say, as the European Court on Human Rights did just the other day, that the press does have a right to take pictures of Princess Caroline of Monaco when she's on the beach, because she's in a public place and she's a public figure. So those are easy things to decide. But things in the middle is where it gets a little complicated. When a public person feels that a part of their life that really should not be of any public interest is being interfered with, but no law is overtly being broken. You know, those are the, you know, that's a very tough issue. And you know, Daniel kept asking the question, and it was a good question, well, should we have regulations? In
that debate, you were the one who brought in the question of regulation. So let's make a little, I don't know, forecast. How do you see how the regulation will change in the near future?
I think what will happen is that there will be more cross-border, more international cooperation.
Having spent half my life as a journalist, I'm very wary of regulations because we've all seen, and we still see today in a lot of countries, unfortunately, governments can use regulations, you know, that are nominally supposed to be for everyone's benefit to shut down dissent, you know, to keep themselves, you know, in power. So I'm wary of regulation. And
the example I gave, Google Street View, for example, is treated very differently in different countries. Now, I don't think that situation can continue. We definitely need more international consensus of how we deal with our data, because the data are crossing borders, they're international, they're available everywhere, they're global.
I think there's going to be more regulation of companies in terms of how they use data that they harvest on the internet. So not just the Facebooks and the Googles, but the advertisers who buy data from them. And I think there's going to be regulation, as we've already seen in Europe to a certain extent, where these companies are going to be forced to disclose what it is they know about you.
So I think we should work towards global standards, in particular data protection.
The point I didn't get a chance to make on the panel that I wish I had is that what we really need more than new regulations are new social attitudes, because at the end of the day, that's what controls what we do.
The question is how the social media will serve the role of control function in the society without damaging the dignity and the knowledge of the people who run countries.
We can set the debate, we can set the agenda, and we can identify where the problems are and where the solutions are, and I think this is what we've done today. As I always say about these conferences you do here in Davos, they're so interesting because they're so diverse. I mean, we started our debate on publicity versus privacy, and it was quite a lively debate. But equally, we had a lively debate about innovation, and communicating innovation is something that I don't know much about. And I was surprised to see the same people taking the floor, but also others, very, very inspired by this. And this is what you take home from Davos, is that you get inspiration from a different field. And that helps you reflect on your own work and also make improvements.